In a small town in Maine, where autumn seemed endless and the streets drowned beneath golden leaves, lived Alex, a boy of 16. To the casual eye, his life unfolded with the mundane serenity of any teenager in the 1980s. School, afternoons at the local diner, and endless walks along streets that never seemed to change. Yet beneath that quiet exterior lay a gnawing unrest, the certainty that each day was but a mirror of the one before. Classes unfolded like some mechanical ritual, teachers reciting the same lessons, classmates trapped in stagnant conversations. Alex often drifted toward the window, staring at the skeletal trees in the schoolyard as though awaiting a sign, an interruption to the monotony that never arrived. Repetition weighed upon him, but heavier still was the dread that one day everything, his family, his home, even his friends, might vanish, leaving him ensnared in an irreversible silence. Afternoons found him with a couple of friends in the town's diner, where the odor of rancid coffee mingled with that of forgotten newspapers. They spoke of horror films, of ghost stories whispered from some neighbor's lips. But such chatter rarely stilled the hollowness swelling inside Alex. His thoughts drifted again and again to his home, to the fragile certainty that his mother, father, and younger sister were the only anchors binding him. And yet, he feared that one night, they too might dissolve into nothingness. The nights were the worst. Alone in his room, with posters of favorite bands plastered on the walls, and an old cassette spinning endlessly, Alex found himself haunted by thoughts he could scarcely put into words. The town's silence, broken only by the faint drone of insects and the groaning of timber, left him feeling as though he were waiting for an event that refused to come. Sometimes, listening to his sister's tranquil breathing through the wall, he caught himself imagining how it would feel if that calm were to vanish. It was that very sensation of interminable waiting that, the following day, drove him to seek something, anything, that might fracture the tedium. One evening, abandoning his friends and their stale banter, Alex wandered through the town center. His steps, guided more by weariness than will, carried him to a shop that nearly vanished into obscurity, an antique store nestled between a bookstore and a barbershop. Its window displayed relics forgotten by time, clocks forever stilled, cracked porcelain dolls, lamps that seemed to sigh dust. Compelled by sudden curiosity, he crossed the threshold. Inside, the air reeked of aged wood and damp paper. Shelves sagged beneath ownerless objects, memories of lives unclaimed. The place seemed suspended outside time, and that very sense of abandonment seduced him. Perhaps here, he thought, he might discover something different, something to rupture the cycle of sameness. Among the clutter, one object ensnared him with uncanny force. In a shadowed corner, as though cast aside by disdain, rested an old radio. Its metal shell was rusted, its dials stiff, yet something in it transcended antiquity. A presence. Alex gazed at it as one locked in a stranger's eyes across an empty room, unable to explain why he could not look away. He paid for the radio almost without thought, carrying it beneath his arm with the feeling of having answered a silent summons. He could not yet know that upon awakening its voice, the object would not merely disturb his routine, but open a doorway into a tale from which there would be no escape. For the first days, the radio was little more than a curiosity in Alex's room. When switched on, its stiff dials yielded the expected. Local stations blaring recycled pop songs, sports broadcasts, news bulletins about accidents and school campaigns. Despite its menacing carcass, the device seemed condemned to banality. The silent call that had drawn him to it dimmed like a spent lamp. At night, Alex sometimes caressed it absent-mindedly, turning the knob out of habit, but the static was nothing more than noise. Fascination gave way to disappointment, and at last, to neglect. Dust gathered upon it in a corner, ready for the attic, until something claimed it again. It was no slamming door, no visible spark, just a brief snap, and then the voice. It seeped from the speaker as though rising from the bottom of a well, grave, measured, emotionless, like a registrar reciting files. It narrated with chilling calm a fire at a gas station in a neighboring town, smoke rising, the names of the dead, described with a naturalness that froze Alex's marrow. The words clung to his skin. The static itself seemed to reek of ash. The next morning, the story filled the papers. What he had heard was no mocking rebroadcast, but a premonition pinned to the day. Coincidence dissolved into certainty. The radio spoke before reality unfurled. And so the pattern settled, silence first, then static, and then the voice, recounting calamities, crashes, disappearances, bodies unearthed. Alex listened against his will, caught between morbid curiosity and a terror that demanded answers. Soon, the horror ceased to speak of strangers. The names it uttered began to belong to his world. The first time a name too close arrived over the waves, the room seemed to collapse around him. The tale of Mr. Callahan, of fall-down porch steps, came true 2 days later. Alex understood then. The station did not merely recount, it selected. Each death was an echo sharpening its frequency, a map etched in pain that drew ever closer to its source. The following nights were unbearable. Alex tried to resist, cutting the cord, hiding the radio, but it always returned to life, or he returned to it. Then came the night when the voice described a workshop steeped in gasoline's odor, treacherous sparks, an explosion devouring all. He needed no name to know. It spoke of his father. When the word was finally spoken, something within Alex cracked in silence. Sirens at dawn confirmed it. Smoke billowed from the workshop exactly as foretold. Certainty turned to rage. But the cruelest blow was yet to fall. His father's absence carved a wound that unraveled his mother. The station, like a beast feasting on fresh grief, deepened its presence in the house, static crawling along the walls, whispers grazing the edges of memory. She yielded. One dawn she was found lifeless. The method mattered little. It was the void she left, the way the house split in two. That same night, still draped in mourning, the radio spoke again with its implacable calm. A child stepping trustfully into the street, the sudden roar of an engine, a laughter cut short. The name that followed was his sister's. The effect struck like lightning. The station had used his sorrow as a compass, and now it knew precisely where to strike next. Blood boiled beneath Alex's skin. Curiosity was dead. This was war. With a heart hardened by grief and guilt, he swore aloud in the hollowed house. The radio would not finish what it had begun. He would not let his sister be another mark upon its map. That night, Alex made no compromises. He called social services, voice broken, and through sobs explained that his sister could not remain alone. 16, shattered, he could not care for her. Workers arrived with flashlights, forms, and the cold efficiency of those hardened by endless cases. They saw the girl, pale, swollen-eyed, clothes rumpled by neglect since their mother's death, and did not hesitate. They took her away in silence, wrapped in a coat that offered no comfort. As the youngest, she was priority. Alex remained, older, and there was no space for him that late hour. They promised to return for him in the morning. Trembling, Alex believed he had bought her safety, time. Back in the house, door shut, the radio veiled beneath a sheet, Alex believed distance would suffice. It did not. Beneath the fabric, the rusted shell seemed to breathe. Before he touched it, a dull pounding thundered in his skull, drums hammering from within. The voice was no longer distant, it was a blade. He remembered his mother's final embrace, his sister's laughter sliced to silence. With fury, he seized a hammer and advanced to the table. As he raised his arm, the air thickened, the light clotted into ash. The voice insinuated itself into his mind, probing with surgical precision. At first, harmless memories, school days, playground games, then petty guilts, forgotten promises, unkept gestures. Soon, the true horrors. His father's eyes heavy with disappointment, his mother's death replayed with grotesque variations, his sister's head split open on the floor. Every imagined blow against the radio rebounded as visions of her destruction. The hammer weighed tons. Metallic taste filled his mouth, iron, copper. Words died upon his tongue. Seconds bled away. He blinked and found himself in another stance, uncertain how much time had passed. At times he forgot why he was there. At others, his sister's name slipped from his mind. The radio did not merely assault. It stripped pieces from him, leaving raw, aching voids. The voice grew crueler still. Lower your arm, and you kill her yourself. Your guilt is greater than my signal. She never needed you. You destroyed her. Each phrase seared him like molten nails. The room warped, the table's edges bending into shadows. Alex no longer knew if he would smash the radio or his own skull. His body trembled, sweat iced his brow, spasms racked his hands. Confusion and rage entwined until reality itself seemed to disintegrate. Then an impossible moment. His sister appeared. Not in visions, not twisted, not accusatory, simply her, dust in her hair, breath calm, an awkward, innocent gesture. That pure vision sustained him. All fear, all manipulation condensed into rage. Everything left of him surged into the blow. The hammer fell with a force that shook the house. Wood splintered, metal shattered. An explosion seemed to cleave the world in two. The radio died, and Alex too, in another sense. He stood, hammer in hand, clarity fractured, breath ragged, gaze lost, mind in ruins. No scream, no relief. Only a statue with its strings severed. The door opened, voices called his name. He did not answer. The radio lay in pieces. Alex was no longer whole. He had saved his sister at the cost of his own mind. That had been his intention, and it was fulfilled. Days later, Alex sat in the recreation room of the asylum. He did not speak. His eyes barely moved. Hands trembled upon his legs, empty. He was a body present, a vessel of shadow. The mind that once struggled and felt was gone. Around him, the world appeared ordinary. Television flickering, midday light through curtains, the murmurs of other patients. On the screen, the announcer ESS neutral voice proclaimed, "Tragedy this morning in the city center. A 9-year-old girl leaving the social services shelter was struck and killed by a vehicle. The community mourns her loss." Something detonated within Alex. A memory resurfaced with unbearable clarity. That night, the hammer descending, the shattering radio. All in vain. A scream tore from his throat, erupting from an abyss yawning within his chest. No one understood, no one listened. The brutal revelation, the station and its voice had never merely foretold death. Inevitability was etched into the tale from the very moment it was broadcast. His body convulsed, every muscle fought his impotence. Every thought shattered and reassembled, only to replay the scene. His sister, the struggle, the sacrifice, and the inevitable end. All horror, all suffering, rendered meaningless. Alex collapsed to his knees before the television, clutching his skull, trembling with absolute despair. His cry echoed through the room, but there was no solace, no explanation. He remained alive, yes, but only as an inward witness, prisoner to a collapsing world beyond his reach, condemned forever to bear the weight of his futile sacrifice.